Good evening, friends. So today we are going to discuss current affair related topics from environment and ecology. Okay, so today I have earmarked 5 important topics for the prelims exam this year. Okay, so let us go ahead and start discussing those topics. Okay, so on your screen now you can see the listed topics over here. So today we are going to discuss the environmental migration. We are going to see about carbon pricing. We will learn about the bioremediation and biomining. We will see single-use plastics, and we will see the e-flow norms for River Ganga. Okay, so these are the topics that we will see today. Okay. So without wasting much time, let us go ahead and see the first topic, which is environmental migration. We will understand about environmental migration. Okay, so someone is saying that I'm not audible. So can you please confirm anyone else if I'm audible to you? Am I audible to other people?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all right. So, Charan, I'm audible to other people. You just check your, earphone or your audio system of your device. Okay, so I'll be resuming the session now. Okay. So now we are going to discuss 5 important topics. Okay, these topics are like we will see environmental migration. So according to the global report on internal displacement, which is in short known as GRID 2019, okay, in 2018 of the total 28 million internally displaced people in 148 countries, 61% were due to disasters. In comparison, 39% were due to conflict and violence. Okay, so this was the recent data related to which was published by GRID, the global report on internal displacement. Okay, so let us learn about environmental migration, okay, or environmental migrants. So according to the International Organization for Migration, environmental migrants are person or groups of persons who predominantly for reasons of sudden or progressive change in the environment that adversely affect their lives or living conditions are obliged to leave their habitual homes or choose to do so either temporarily or permanently, and who move either within their country or abroad. Okay, so the thing is, the International Organization for Migration has defined what do we mean by environmental migrants. But the thing is, there is no uniform definition of environmental migrants or environmental migration globally. Okay, so the thing is, there are a lot of international bodies that are working on mitigating the climate change, but they have not adopted a unified definition of environmental migrants or environmental migration. Okay, so now let us see, like international conventions on environmental migrants. So there are a lot of international conventions available for this. There is one thing which is known as New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants. Okay, UNHCR 2016. It seeks to protect the human right of all refugees and migrants regardless of their status. Okay, second thing is the Global Compact on Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration 2016. It is the first ever United Nations global agreement on a common approach to international migration in all its dimensions. Then it says that climate refugees, they are also known as migrants. Okay, climate refugees or migrants who move due to natural disasters or climate change are now recognized under its objective. Okay, then there are other international conventions also available, so I'll be highlighting these important international conventions for you. So this is the peninsular principles on climate displacement within these states. Then we have another initiative internationally which is known as uh, Nansen Initiative protection agenda for cross-border displaced persons. Okay. Then we do have platform on disaster displacement. Okay. And then we have climate migrants and refugee project. Okay, we have climate migrants and refugee project. So these are the international, initiatives available uh, related to the International Convention on this environmental migrants. Then if we talk about environmental refugees, okay, so the thing is, there is no unified definition till date, okay, that has been adopted by all the countries together. So we do not have a unified definition of this thing. Then we have United Nations Human Rights Committee in its January in 2020 ruling said that the refugees fleeing the effects of the climate crisis cannot be forced to return their home by their adoptive countries. In its ruling, the committee cited Article 6 and 7 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which ensures the individual's inherent right to life. Okay. And we do have United Nations Refugee Convention of 1950. It grants certain rights to people fleeing persecution because of race, religion, nationality, affiliation to a particular social group or political opinion. Okay. So these are the things that are related to environmental migration. What we need to remember from this particular topic is we need to just remember name of this group, name of this report, which is Global Report on Internal Displacement, GRID 2019. It talks about, like displacement of people because of environmental reasons, okay, environmental or other reasons. Then we have International Organization for Migration that has actually defined what do we mean by this environmental migrants. Then apart from this, internationally, we have different conventions on environmental migrants. They are New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants. Okay. We have Global Compact on Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration 2018. We have the Peninsula Principles on Climate Displacement within the states. Okay. We have Nansen Initiative Protection Agenda for Cross-Border Displaced Persons. Then we have Platform on Disaster Displacement, and we have Climate Migrants and Refugee Project. Okay, so these are the international conventions that talk about environmental migrants. Okay, so this is all about this particular topic. Now let us understand the second topic for the day, which is carbon pricing. Okay, we will understand about carbon pricing now. Why it was in news? Because a report of the High Level Commission on Carbon Pricing and Competitiveness by the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition. Okay, so the thing is, there is a coalition which is known as Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition, makes a strong case for carbon pricing. Okay, so this particular coalition makes a strong case. They say that like carbon must be priced. Okay, so in this respect, we will understand what do we mean by carbon pricing. Okay, so carbon pricing is an instrument that captures the external cost of greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, carbon pricing is an instrument that captures the external cost of greenhouse gas emission, the cost of emissions that the public pays for, such as damage to crops, healthcare costs from heat waves and drought, and loss to property from flooding and sea level rise, and trace them to their sources, like through a price, usually in the form of a price on the carbon dioxide emitted. Okay, so this is the thing. So this is just carbon pricing. This talks about what do we mean by carbon pricing. It is an instrument that captures the external cost of greenhouse gas emission. Then if we talk about what are the methods available for carbon pricing, okay, or what are the types of carbon pricing, we have one of the thing is known as emission trading system. Okay, then another is a carbon tax. Okay, so we have emission trading system, then we have carbon tax. We will understand what do we mean by emission trading system. Okay, the emission trading system is also referred to as cap and trade system. Okay, it caps the total level of greenhouse gas emissions and allows those industries with low emission to set their extra allowances to larger emitters. Okay, by creating supply and demand emissions allowances, the emission trading system establishes a market price for greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so if some organization or some country, they are emitting the carbon at a level which is beyond the limit set for them, then they will have to pay price for it. This is known as emission trading system. The cap helps ensure that the captured emission reductions will take place to keep the emitters, okay, within their pre-allowed carbon budget. A carbon tax directly sets a price on a carbon by defining a tax rate on greenhouse gas emissions, or more commonly on the carbon content of the fossil fuels. Okay, so you might have heard about that while purchasing, a petrol or diesel, you may have to pay, some additional tax. This is known as carbon tax. Why carbon tax is imposed? So that, the consumption of carbon based thing reduces, so that, its impact is reduced in the environment. And it is different from the emission trading system in that the emission reduction outcome of a carbon tax is not predefined, but the carbon price is defined over here. Okay, then we do have result based climate finance also. Okay, then we have internal carbon pricing. Okay, internal carbon pricing are, kind of mechanism that are set by organizations internally. Okay, there are some organizations, let's consider Microsoft, Google and all. So a lot of companies are there globally, so they have their own in-house mechanism within their organization, so that they can reduce the, greenhouse gas that they are emitting. So this is known as internal carbon pricing. Okay, this is the thing. Then result based climate finance, it is a funding approach where payments are made after predefined outputs or outcome related to managing climate change, such as emission reductions, are delivered or verified. Okay, then we do have this thing, carbon pricing leadership coalition. So we have talked about it in the beginning. Okay, carbon pricing leadership coalition. Okay, so this is the thing. Over here you can see, I'm just highlighting this thing for you, that there was a report of the high level commission on carbon pricing and competitiveness by carbon pricing leadership coalition. So we will understand about carbon pricing leadership coalition. Okay, so we will see what is this. It is a voluntary initiative of 34 national and sub-national governments, over 163 businesses from a range of sectors and regions, and over 82 strategic partners representing civil society organizations, non-government organizations, and academic institutions, etc. It brings together leaders from government, business, civil society, and academia to support carbon pricing, share experiences, and enhance the global, regional, national, and sub-national understanding of carbon pricing implementation. Then the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition Secretariat is administered by the World Bank Group. It is a very important information, okay, that Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition is administered by the World Bank Group. They may ask a question, a statement-based question, where they can give this particular statement, okay. Then from India, Delhi Metro Rail Corporation and Indian Railways are the government level partners, okay. So from India, these are two organizations that are partnering with the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition. Okay, then I have included some, current status of carbon pricing, so you can read it once I share the document with you. Now let us look into the third topic for the day, which is bioremediation and biomining. Okay, so why bioremediation and biomining was in news? Because the Delhi Municipal Corporation has started the process of biomining and bioremediation of the 3 landfills in Delhi, namely this Bhalsawa, Okhla, and Gazipur. Okay, so the thing is, they have started biomining and bioremediation of the 3 landfill areas in Delhi. Okay, they are these Bhalsawa, Okhla, and Gazipur. So let us understand what do we mean by bioremediation and what do we understand by biomining. Okay, so bioremediation is the treatment of pollutants or waste, okay, by the use of microorganisms that break down the undesirable substances. Okay, so in bioremediation, what happens, we treat the pollutants or waste by the use of microorganisms. Okay, in bioremediation, the treatment of pollutants or waste happens by the use of microorganisms that break down the undesirable substance. This is bioremediation. Now let us talk about biomining. Okay, so biomining is the process of using microorganisms or microbes to extract metals of economic interest from rock, ores, or mine waste. Biomining simply means it is the process of using microorganisms to extract metals of economic interest. Mining means, like, we are extracting some material, okay, for our economic benefit. Okay, biomining, like we take the help of microorganisms to extract metals of economic interest from rock, ores, or mine waste. Okay, biomining is associated with, you can just connect it with mining. Why do we do mining? We do mining so that we can extract, you know, important natural resources from their natural, you know, like places, okay, from their ores or from the mines. Okay, so this is biomining. It is the process of using microorganisms to extract metals of economic interest from rock, ores, or mine waste. Okay, then biomining technique may be used to clean up sites that have been polluted with metals. Biomining will involve the use of separator machines or large sieves to separate waste material of different sizes, thereby obtaining soil, plastics, wood, and metal components in isolation for appropriate processing. Okay. Then we do have some alternative methods for redemption of landfilling. Okay, what are the alternative methods? One of the method is known as thermal treatment. Then another is known as subsurface cut-off walls. Okay, subsurface cut-off walls. So let us understand what do we mean by thermal treatment. Okay, so thermal treatment refers to the process that use heat to treat waste materials. Okay, it is the process that use heat to treat waste materials. Some of the most commonly used thermal waste treatment techniques are incineration, gasification, and pyrolysis. Okay, so these are the like, you know, thermal waste treatment techniques. So you should, you know, learn these names. Okay, I'll be highlighting it for you. So I'm using a different color over here. So thermal treatment techniques are incineration, gasification, and pyrolysis. Now let us see what do we understand by subsurface cutoff walls. Okay, the cutoff walls for solid waste dump sites are usually designed to separate the waste dump from any underlying water stream or source. Okay, so this is the thing. So in this article, what we understood the differences between bioremediation and biomining. Okay, bioremediation is the treatment of pollutants or waste, okay, by the use of microorganisms. Then biomining is the process of using microorganisms to extract metals of economic interest from rock, ores, or mine waste. Okay, so this is the difference between both the terms. Then we do have some alternative methods. One of the method is thermal treatment, and thermal treatment is the process that use heat to treat waste materials. And there are three such processes: incineration, gasification, and pyrolysis. Then we understood subsurface cutoff walls. Okay, the cutoff walls for solid waste dump sites are usually designed to separate the waste dump from any underlying water stream or source. Okay, let's consider that we do have some solid waste, but in that solid waste some liquid is also there. So how do we separate the solid from the liquid? To separate the solid from liquid, we use a cutoff wall. Okay, so that like if we pass all those things from the cutoff wall, only the liquid will be passed, but the solid will be remaining over there. So they get separated. Okay, so this is all in the third topic. Okay, let us move to the fourth topic for the day, which is single-use plastic. Okay, so we will see what do we mean by single-use plastic. Do we have a unified definition of single-use plastic? And what are the steps taken by the governments to, you know, to control the single-use plastic? Okay, and apart from this, we will also learn some, you know, common examples of single-use plastics, and we will see whether they are recyclable, okay, fully or partially. We are going to see like all these things in this article today. The topics are more of a conceptual nature. Okay, they are not that factual, but the thing is, you may expect some questions from these topics also, because nowadays UPSC is asking more concept oriented questions. Okay, so let us see why single use plastics were in use. India has held off imposing a blanket ban on single use plastics to combat pollution. Okay, so India has thought like we will uh, completely impose a blanket ban on single use plastic, but later on they have stopped it. They have held it for some time. Okay, so that's why it is important for us to understand what do we mean by single use plastic. Okay, so single use plastic, it refers to the disposable plastics that are commonly used for plastic packaging and includes items intended to be used only once before they are thrown away or recycled. Okay, so single use plastics are those disposable plastics that are used only for single time use. Okay. Now, there is no fixed definition. This is very important. There is no fixed definitions for single use plastic. Okay. I'll be highlighting this term, and it varies from country to country. Okay. India is in the process of giving a statutory definition to the single use plastic. Okay. And now let us see what are the steps taken by India. India has taken India has started plastic waste management rules 2016 that was amended in 2018. It defines minimum thickness of plastic carry bags, that is 50 microns. Okay, it says that minimum thickness for plastic carry bags to be 50 microns. Okay, so what happens that minimum thickness is very high as compared to the plastics that we use commonly nowadays. Okay, so what will it do? It will increase the cost, and the tendency to provide free carry bags, okay, would come down. Okay, so it will reduce the availability of plastic carry bags in the market, because that minimum thickness is very high, that leads to increase in its pricing. Okay, so what will happen, like people will stop giving free plastic bags to their customers. Then government has put the responsibility of local bodies also. Okay, rural areas are brought under the rule, since plastic has reached rural areas as well. The Gram Sabhas have been given responsibility of implementation. Okay, then extended producer responsibility. What do we mean by extended producer responsibility? Okay, so it means that the producers and brand owners have been made responsible for collecting waste generated from their products. Okay, so the thing is, producers and brand owners have been made responsible to collect back the waste generated from their products. Okay, then producers are to keep a record of their vendors to whom they have supplied raw materials for manufacturing. This is to curb manufacturing of these products in unorganized sector. Okay, then the thing is, their government has set responsibility of waste generator also. Okay, people who are generating the waste, they have set the responsibility on them also. How? All institutional generators of plastic waste shall segregate and store their waste as per the solid waste management rules. Okay, and hand over segregated waste to authorized waste disposal facilities. Okay, then they have set responsibility of street vendors and retailers also. So not to provide such carry bags or fine would be imposed. Okay, so responsibility on street vendors and retailers have been set. Okay, so the thing is, they have said like they should not provide carry bags, or otherwise fine would be imposed on them. Only the registered shopkeepers on payment of a registration fee to the local bodies would be allowed to give out plastic carry bags on charge. Okay, so the thing is, they will charge their customers to give plastic carry bags, and to do so they have to get themselves registered with the local authorities first. Okay, then government is trying to promote the use of plastic for road construction and energy recovery. Okay, then they have also established a central registration system for the registration of the producer or importer or owner. Okay, then they have phased out multi-layered plastic. Okay, then we do have national marine litter policy also to identify the source of litter, especially the plastic waste that flows into India's coastal waters. Okay, India aims to get rid of single-use plastic by 2022. It is very important information over here, the last line. Okay, so the thing is, India aims to get rid of single-use plastics by 2022. So let us learn about what are the different categories of plastics. Okay, generally plastics are broadly categorized into two broad categories. One of the categories is thermoplastics. Second category is thermosets and others. Okay, thermoplastics and thermosets. Okay, thermoplastics are further categorized into different types. One is PS. It means polystyrene. Okay, PP, polypropylene. Okay, polypropylene. Then LDPE, low density polyethylene. Then PVC, which stands for plasticized polyvinyl chloride or polyvinyl chloride. Then HDPE, high density polyethylene. Then PET. Okay, PET bottles are there. They are known as polyethylene tetraphthalate. Okay, polyethylene tetraphthalate. So the thing is, these like we have learned about the chemical names of these, you know, categories of plastics, and here examples are given. Okay, examples are given, like what are the examples of these things. Then on the right side of this table, they have given the information whether they are recyclable. Okay, so partially recyclable, partially, then yes, they are fully recyclable, like that. Okay, so you should go through this map once again, go through this you know, infographic once I share the document. Okay, we have taken some global steps also, like United Nations Environment Program has declared the theme of the World Environment Day as Beat Plastic Pollution. Then G20 implementation framework for action on marine plastic litter is there. Then United Nations Environment has launched Clean Seas campaign. Then we do have Honolulu strategy. Then we have Global Tourism Plastic Initiative. It is a very important topic because like it is a part of the activities of the Sustainable Tourism Program of the One Planet Network, led by the UN Environment and the World Tourism Organization in collaboration with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Okay. Apart from this, we have Basel Convention on and Stockholm Convention. Okay. They have defined what do we mean by microplastics or microbeads, and then plastic crust. Okay. This is also in news. Okay. Many a times, I have seen, you know, questions on MCQs in different test series related to this. Okay. So this is important. You should be just going through this thing. Okay. Let us move to the next topic for the day, which is e-flow norms for river Ganga. We will understand about e-flow norms for river Ganga quickly. Okay, so we have very less time for covering this topic. What is now why it was in news? Because the e-flow norms were notified by the National Mission for Clean Ganga. It is in short known as NMCG. Okay, and they were to be enforced. Okay, they had already been enforced from December 2019. Okay, however, according to the Central Water Commission, 4 of the 11 hydropower projects on the upper Ganga reaches of the river Ganga tributaries are violating the Ganga ecological flow norms. Okay, e-flow norms means ecological flow norms. Okay, so here, you know, some information is given about e-flow norms. Okay, so you should be just reading it once I share the document. And here they have included the information about like where uh, like what are the reasons for, you know, Ganga getting polluted. Okay, so these information is given in the, you know, like this green boxes over here. Like numerous hydel projects are there, decreased environmental flow is there, growing cities, okay, polluting industries are there, very high pollution level is there at different areas throughout the Ganga, okay, Ganga river basin over here. Okay, so we do have Namami Gange program. What do we mean by Namami Gange program? It is an integrated conservation mission approved in June 2014 with budget outlay of rupees 20,000 crore to accomplish the twin objective. What are those twin objectives? Effective abatement of pollution. Second is conservation and rejuvenation of national river Ganga. Okay, these are the things. Then the vision for Ganga rejuvenation constitutes restoring the wholesomeness of the river defined in terms of ensuring aviral dhara. It means continuous flow. Okay, nirmal dhara. It means unpolluted flow. Then geologic and ecological integrity. Okay, these are important keywords. Okay, that are part of the Namami Gange program. So you should be learning it. Okay. Then main pillars of the Namami Gange program are sewage treatment infrastructure, industrial effluent monitoring, riverfront development, river surface cleaning, biodiversity, afforestation, public awareness, and Ganga Gram. Okay. Then under the Environmental Protection Act 1986, a 5-tier structure has been envisaged at national, state, and district level to take measures for prevention, control, and abatement of environmental pollution in Ganga. Okay, so what are those 5 steps? One is National Ganga Council under the chairmanship of Prime Minister. Okay, it has replaced the National Ganga River Basin Authority. Then the second structure is Empowered Task Force on River Ganga under the chairmanship of Union Minister of Jal Shakti. Then we have National Mission for Clean Ganga. Okay, we have a State Ganga Committee. We have district Ganga committees in every specified district abutting river Ganga and its tributaries in states. Okay, then it is very important information over here that National Mission for Clean Ganga is registered as a society under the Societies Registration Act of 1860. It acts as an implementation, okay, arm of National Council for Rejuvenation, Protection and Management of River Ganga. Okay, it is referred as National Ganga Council. Okay, so in this article, what important things we have come across is National Mission for Clean Ganga. Then we have learned about Central Water Commission. Then some information related to ecological flow norms have been given over here. Okay, then we have seen the vision for Ganga rejuvenation constitutes three important pillars. They are Aviral Dhara, it means continuous flow. Nirmal Dhara, it means unpolluted flow. Then geologic and ecological integrity. Okay. Then the main pillars of Namami Gange program, we have seen it. Then under Environmental Protection Act 1986, they have created a 5-tier structure. They are National Ganga Council, Empowered Task Force on River Ganga, National Mission for Clean Ganga, State Ganga Committees, District Ganga Committees. Okay, so this is all in this topic. Okay, so with this, like I'll be I'll be resting my case. Okay, so that's all on this topic for the day. Okay,